Hi, this is Exploring with Em and Stu.
And today we are here on the Suffolk coast where we're going to continue our hunt for the old coastal military remains. We're actually right between Pakefield and Kessingland.
Yep.
And we're basically going to be searching to see what we can find. We've actually been here before, a good few years ago now, wasn't it?
5 years ago,
yeah.
I think.
Sadly, we didn't have the best equipment and we didn't have the best weather.
Or knowledge.
No, and we were kindly reminded by one of our viewers that the video wasn't the best recently. So here we are, back to make a better video. And hopefully find even more, because we had to cut that video a little short because of the downpour that we sadly had.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get searching and see if anything, fingers crossed, that we can find. So the stretch of sandy beach here between Pakefield and Kessingland today is enjoyed by locals and tourists here to enjoy its miles of sandy coastline. But during World War II, it was a very different scene, being turned into a military landscape due to it being so vulnerable to invasion. The beaches were closed and pillboxes, gun emplacements and batteries, not to mention miles of scaffolding and barbed wire, were constructed all along the coastline here. Sadly, today only a fraction of these still actually survive, with what wasn't cleared away after the war having now been lost to coastal erosion, which is particularly bad all along the coast here. Despite this, enough still actually remains for us to get a really good impression of how this part of the coastline was defended during the war.
And here Emma comes along from giving you that little bit of brief introduction to the history of this part of the beach.
Yeah, and today, of course, we're going to go on a bit of a hunt to see what still remains from these numerous defences that were once here.
We're looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah.
It's been a little while since we've done anything like this, since last summer, actually.
That's it.
So let's go and have a little crack on.
Have a look. Hopefully we'll find some bits still when we were here last. Some new bits have been uncovered.
Yeah.
I'm sure that since then some of those bits may have been lost, but there may be some more bits.
That's it.
Fingers crossed. So we're not too sure what we're going to find, but you'll be exploring along with us. So
yeah, exactly. So
who knows?
Let's go and get cracking, shall we?
Let's go. So we've just left Kessingland just behind us here to the south, and there's actually a few pillboxes at Kessingland, more so the other side. We didn't go quite that far. We did find one, which I'm going to insert a little scan now, but unfortunately there was a man sitting eating his lunch right in front of it, so we couldn't film too much around it because we didn't want to disturb him. But it was a Suffolk square. We could tell by sort of the large size of the one remaining wall, but sadly it's been either demolished or lost for some reason or another. There is actually another pillbox just behind us here on the north part of Kessingland, but I think it's in somebody's back garden, which is another shame because that one is actually quite substantial and whole. But there definitely are some things that we can show you, so we're going to keep walking and have a look.
So we've just come to a part of a beach. We've actually just got the drone out. We've actually just taken some nice drone footage of the area, haven't we?
Yeah.
And just up there, obviously, I think Emma was saying to you a little while ago that it's called private gardens, so we can't get to what it looks like an absolute immaculate pillbox.
Yeah, lovely pillbox, which you're probably now seeing. And it looks like a Suffolk square but clearly it's been looked after, unlike the one further down. But just behind that, there was actually a coastal artillery battery as well. Long since gone.
Yeah.
There was no remains or anything, but it just goes to show that there was batteries and gun emplacements dotted all the way along here.
That's it.
So we're hoping that we might actually be able to show you the remains of the other one that was here. Fingers crossed if it's not been lost since we were last
That's
here.
it.
But
so
we'll keep walking.
We're going to keep on walking and have a quick look and look at some scenery. Obviously, we won't film all that. That's for us.
Yeah.
And we'll see you at our next part.
So we're still walking along the coast here, and we've actually come across something that could be interesting. We're not too sure. We found a couple of these. Now, we may be completely wrong and barking up the wrong tree, but they do look a little bit like the old scaffolding sort of pole sort of mounts that would have been all the way along here. They'd have had massive scaffolding systems, obviously, to sort of stop landings, stop tanks being able to get on the beach. Now, again, this may not actually be one, and maybe somebody out there actually can tell us that this used to have like an old sign on it or something, and that's what it was built for. But we found a few of them, so we thought we'd point them out, just in case they actually do date back to the war. So we're still walking along the eroded cliffs behind us and seeing remnants of old caravan parks and all sorts of things sticking out. But we've just come up to a rather special little site for us, because just above us here is our radar station that, if you've been following the channel for enough, you know that we've actually been here for a couple of times. Chain Home Low radar station, obviously from World War II, used for identifying sort of low-level aircrafts, enemy aircrafts coming in. But it's quite sad really, because every time we come here it's protruding more and more. It's actually undermined now, and I'm sure it won't be too long before the council maybe decide that it's probably too dangerous and actually demolish it. But it's nice to get one last little look at it, I suppose.
So there it is, the Chain Home radar station.
Chain Home Low.
Absolutely
yeah.
Brilliant. It is a shame. We've just literally come from the path, and as soon as we started seeing it, we were like, wow, those steps have now dropped and they're cracking. There's cracks coming along where the support struts are, and it's all undermined on the left hand side.
Yeah,
it's really quite sad to see,
because the other there's not many radar stations are actually still left along the coast here.
No.
Quite as complete as that one. We do have a video of it if you want to check it out. We'll stick a little link up here,
yeah, absolutely,
down below, where we've had a really good look around it. We've looked at the communal buildings, the generator rooms, and
also, if you can see what I'm pointing at, you can see where the original fences are, where it shutters off.
Yeah.
That's actually not for the Chain Home radar station. That is actually for a ROC post, which is literally tucked on the right hand side.
Cold War monitoring post, if you're interested in those. So we also took a little look at that in the video.
Yeah.
But we're hoping that we're going to start finding a bit more interesting things now.
Yeah,
so,
we're actually looking through the cliffs, because when they had scaffolds strewn literally across the beaches for defence, normally it was buried literally up there. So where this is eroded away, it's now being poking out, isn't it?
Yeah. And if we find it, we'll talk to you a little bit more about it.
That's it.
But let's get going and see what else we can find. So just behind us, we've actually come to the site of one of the quite extensive gun batteries that was along here, and there was actually 7 of them originally, dotted between Lowestoft and Southwold. And this one here would have had 2 6-inch naval guns originally. It would have had 2 gun houses. It would have had all the underground complex of magazines that would have come with it, observation posts, accommodation and everything. But sadly now, it's just what remains of it anyway. There's a pile of rubble protruding out of the cliffs. And the last time we were here, we actually saw some remains of it, and we can find in little bricks and things scattered around, but it looks as if in the last 4 years, a lot of it has been lost. But you can just imagine that once upon a time, it looking for the enemy ships and aircrafts to fire at once upon a time. But if you didn't really know that it was here, then nowadays you wouldn't have a clue of its history, which is a bit of a shame.
So here we are, just going down this beautiful beach. It's taking its time. It's taking its time. Yeah. But we've just come across this, and what is it?
Well, this site used to be a World War II rifle range. And if you happen to have watched our previous video, then you would have seen that part of the shooting butts was sort of slipping down the cliffs at the time. That's and right. We actually found one on the shore here, which we weren't overly sure what it was.
That's right.
But I do believe in the last 4 years, more and more of those concrete shooting butts have actually fallen onto the beach. And if we look behind us, we can see bits of old fencing and all sorts of pipes and bricks and all sorts of things falling down. So we're not overly sure what's actually still left up there. But I do believe about a year ago, they moved some of the large pieces of concrete slightly further up the coast to use as a bit of a sea defence. So we're wondering if we might actually still be able to see the remaining shooting butts further up the coast if we can get that far. But it's shocking really in the last 4 years.
Whoa!
Oh my goodness.
Now, look at that. What?
Oh,
Look at this.
Right, let's go.
Finley!
Finley!
Really sorry about that little bit of a dramatic scene then, but you have no idea how dramatic that was. That was...
Well, we didn't know how dramatic it was going to be.
No.
As you can see, we were filming, thankfully, quite far away from the cliffs because we're not that silly. And all of a sudden we heard a thud, looked behind us and saw some pebbles falling down. Decided maybe we should move a bit further away, and all of a sudden, huge chunk came down.
Yeah,
so
huge. It made a big thud, and it was like a sonic boom in your ear roll when it actually came down.
It thudded before it fell, which
Yeah.
was a bit strange, but that just goes to show how dramatic and how rapid it's literally crumbling in front of your eyes, which is really sad, obviously, for the coast here. But you know, this is why we get to see the bits from the wall, obviously, that, you know, the military bits that are falling down. But yeah, that was that could have been a little bit eerie, thankfully.
I was quite pleased that we witnessed that, though.
Yeah,
in a way.
I think so. Yeah, it just brings it home, doesn't it?
Well, there were
really?
some people actually sitting on the beach that heard me shout, and then they got up and they were further away. And they started running.
Yeah, but please, if you're going to come and walk along here,
stay away from the edge.
Stay far, like we've tried to, and we've been obviously telling Finley not to get too close because you just don't know when it's going to go.
No, you don't.
We've had no rain, we've not really had any wind.
No.
So, anyway, that's the remains,
Yeah.
even more so now, hanging down of
Yeah.
the World War II rifle range, which I think they continued to use until quite some years later, didn't they?
That's it.
We're going to have a little look and see if we can see the other parts of it, which they've possibly dragged away. But
Yeah.
we'll talk about that
That's
if
it.
we get a bit
Okay
into
then.
it.
Well, I think we better have a dive down there and have a quick look around
Yeah.
still.
So, still continuing along the coastline, being very cautious of these rather loose cliffs, but we've actually come to an area that we found last time, which was one of the old scaffolding pole dumps just down here, and this is about as close as I'm going to get, but Stu's going to zoom in with his camera, because after they cleared a lot of the beach scaffolding along the coastlines here, a lot of it really just got put into big pits and buried. And of course, over the years, the coast has eroded more and more, and these pits that were not too far away from the edge of the cliffs originally are now starting to basically fall out of the cliffs. And this is an area where we identified quite a substantial one last time. Now, as you can see from the footage there, it's actually almost on the beach now. We'd like to get in there and have a real good sort of hunt around, but we're not going to. We've just experienced what can happen if you get too close to these cliffs, so this is as close as we're going to get. But it's quite fascinating to see, probably one of the most substantial, I think, war remains we've seen today. Just here, and no doubt it won't be long before the council will probably come along and clear all this out too. But we're going to keep on up the coast. We're nearly done now, so if we see anything else, we'll show you. So we're still following the coastline and looking at the quite devastating erosion, which is clearly blighting this area quite badly, as we can see behind us. But we found one of the things we were looking for, because as I mentioned down there about the rifle range, that last year they actually used some of the butts that slipped down off of that cliff as a little bit of a sea defence. And believe it or not, here they are. Not looking quite as substantial as they were when we saw them over there. Clearly they've been hit with quite a lot of vigorous weather over the years, but if you look very closely, you can still just about make out the indents of the bullet holes. And last time we saw this, it was absolutely covered in these, and it was a good metre taller, I would say, at the time. But they've got 3 little sections along here, this piece, and there's also 2 more just over there. I guess it's nice to see they're actually reusing them for something, at least some sort of use. Of course, they were used as defending the country back then, and now they're still used for defending the coast of the country, I suppose. But here we go, World War II rifle range remains.
Just left the emplacements for the gun butts just around the corner there, and we've just stumbled across something quite amazing, actually.
Yes.
I think it's
Yeah,
quite
we
amazing.
think it's amazing anyway.
Yeah.
So going back to what we were talking to you about, the scaffolding that was all the way across here, and we said after the war, when they eventually cleared it all off of the beaches so the tourists could come back, they stuck it in great big dumps and buried it. And we've found little bits along the way. Well, we've actually got quite a substantial one here, as well as a few other interesting little bits. We found, you may be familiar with the pigtail, as they're better known as. And this is basically for barbed wire. This is a post, and they used these because they were quieter than knocking posts in. And I guess they continue to use them over here on the shores of England as well. But that's always nice to see, and I think it might have actually been reused sort of in many years afterwards as well. It looks like there's some more modern barbed wire there. But just further along here, if we come along a little bit further, we've got other bits of concrete which could have likely come from a pillbox or something.
All just down here and
Yeah.
that. And there's bits of metal strewn again throughout the part of the beach. But I will say this is dangerous. I will say it's dangerous. It's not great that the council has left it here.
Yeah.
But look at this.
This is quite substantial, isn't it? And again, last time we were here, we saw quite a lot of this. And here we've got clearly old World War II scaffolding poles that have obviously eroded out of the cliffs behind us. And again, we've got some more of these sort of curly-whirly pigtails for the barbed wire. So, well, they're proper embedded in there, but I'm guessing in the future they're all going to get washed out to sea if somebody doesn't clear them up. But a little bit of history just sitting here on the beach, and these tourists are here clearly enjoying their day to day, and they probably don't even know what these used to be. But I think we've got a few more things to have a look at, so we'll take you up the coast and point out some more bits. And just very slightly further along the coast here, we've got more remains falling out of the cliffs. Now we do know that this was actually the site of a coastal artillery battery originally, and I can only assume that the concrete and the bits of brick that have just been buried are the remains of that. Apparently there isn't any evidence of this particular battery still in situ, so I'm guessing this is actually it. And of course you've got more of the scaffolding poles that, again, when they maybe knocked down this battery to make the coastline look beautiful again for all the tourists, I'm assuming they chucked some of the old scaffolding poles in it as well. But again, it's nice to sort of see that we can find some of the evidence, but it doesn't look very nice, and I'm sure that the council are going to have to do something with it at some point. But I can't really see anything other than just bits of concrete and bits of bricks. But this was the site once upon a time of our coastal artillery battery, and those of us that know it was here find it a bit interesting at least. But we're nearly finished now, so just keep walking, and if we find something else, we'll show you.
Well, we've come from all the way down there in Kessingland, and now I think we're in Pakefield. Is that
Yeah,
right?
we've pretty much hit Pakefield now. There was supposedly a few pillboxes along the way, and obviously scaffolding and stuff, but there's no sign of it now. They've either been demolished because this is quite a built-up area, so I suppose they wanted to make the aesthetics of the seaside look a little nicer and demolish them, or maybe some of them have been lost to the erosion.
That's it.
But other than that, there hasn't been an awful lot to see along that bit, so we didn't bother filming.
No.
But we have got quite an interesting feature just down here, and something actually quite significant to show you finally.
Yes.
So we're going to get down to sort of the main seaside part of Pakefield, and we'll talk to you about it when we get there.
Right, see you there.
So just coming up off the beach there, we come to this area here, which in 1941 was actually chosen as the site for an emergency coastal battery with its 6-pounder guns looking out over to the sea. Now there was actually one more battery just up here, which was the South Pier battery, which had quick-fire guns, but unfortunately that's long gone. But like I promised, there's actually something to show you at this particular site, so let's go and have a look.
So here comes Emma from just doing a bit of walking and talking down there, where a fella's about to do a bit of droning.
Ah, right.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
so-
We've already done ours, thankfully.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I keep going on about how significant it is, the thing that we want to show you, but sadly, it's not quite as significant as it would have been.
That's right.
Because just a few years ago, in 2020, behind you was the site of the Grand Hotel. And this particular battery was actually called the Grand Hotel Battery.
Battery, yeah.
And just behind us, at the front of this particular hotel, they actually built the base observation post and I believe the fire control tower for the actual battery, which is just to the north here.
Yeah.
But sadly, they decided to knock it down, along with all those quite amazing military bits.
Yeah.
There are some pictures about. I think I'm going to try and insert them.
That's
I only
it.
wish that when we were here 4 years ago, we'd actually have got this far, because it would have still been here.
But you can sort of make out the outline where the base observation would have been, which is just along here, and the hotel would have been situated in this new build just here, sandwiched in between this older building, obviously 70s, 60s building,
Probably.
and obviously we've got a modern day building just here, and this is where it would have been situated.
Yeah.
And along here would have been where the base observation
Yeah,
was.
well, like I said, the base observation posts were actually built onto the hotel.
Onto the hotel.
It was a type of camouflage. I mean, this particular battery was actually known as one of the best camouflaged gun batteries on the East Coast. And
Yeah.
they incorporated as much as they physically could to try and disguise
That's it.
as being one of these gun batteries.
I think me and Emma were just discussing actually, it actually becoming in this country, in the military particularly, an art form.
It did,
An
yeah.
actual art form.
Camouflage and military sort of thing installations did become a bit of an art.
Art form.
I always think that they maybe had little competitions
Yeah.
between the different regiments as to how good are things that they can do and ideas they can come up with.
That's it.
And it was quite ingenuitive, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Some
it
of the
was.
things that they did. But we're going to carry on along
Yeah.
and show you the thing that we keep talking
No,
about.
yeah, that's it. Come on, let's get going. Stop talking.
So this particular gun battery was actually quite a substantial building to start with. It was built to a very high standard, unlike some of the other ones around here, which were just sandbags and things like that to begin with. They actually built this one out of concrete right from the beginning. So the 6-inch Royal Naval guns were housed in gun houses, and actually there was one of them sited just here. Obviously it's now been demolished. And the base observation post is obviously just behind us where the Grand Hotel used to be. But these two gun houses were connected via underground walkways to the North Gun House. And actually, we've got it just here.
Right, so Emma's just come back from over where the other gun house is, and just behind us,
We've got the North Gun House, which today, as you can see, is actually being used as a bit of a beach shelter. But we do believe that when it was actually built to basically resemble a beach shelter,
yeah,
obviously.
disguise, another art
Yeah.
of disguising, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's been turned back into that now. But what you see now wasn't the only sort of form of camouflage that it had, because supposedly it had scaffolding on the top with nets. They put foliage in it, and either side of it as well, over where the sort of the underground tunnels were, sort of disguise the concrete.
Yeah, exactly.
And all sorts. Like I said, they really used their own imagination when it came to trying to camouflage this particular one, and I imagine it worked quite well.
And it is a shame because these doors are shut, but we do believe that because these were interlinking, so there probably still is the tunnel
Yeah.
system underneath there linking the two, one that doesn't exist anymore and one that's still existing.
Well, just to the side of it, the ground's actually higher. So we'd like to think that buried underneath that somewhere is the underground walkways
Yeah.
and that, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute. But it's really amazing to see the amount of people who probably sit in here, walk past it and have no idea that this was actually a World War II gun
Gun house.
emplacement.
That's it, yeah.
Quite incredible, really.
It is. But we're going to carry on and let Emma tell you a few more bits.
So running along the back of this gun house and connecting it to the other gun house that was just to the south here was a long underground passageway. And off of that passageway there was numerous rooms such as magazines, shell stores, shelters for the guys obviously who were manning this. I mean, they even had toilets and food and water stores, so that if they did have to put this battery into action, they didn't actually have to leave, and they could have basically stayed down there pretty much self-contained for a little while. So, as well as the main gun complex just in front of me and the base observation posts obviously that were at the Grand Hotel behind me, this battery had several other buildings scattered around, and they actually even used some of the large houses just to the east here when they requisitioned them to use them for military use. But as well as this, of course, the battery would have had other structures you associate with a gun battery. Of course, it had searchlights, and I believe one of these was actually mounted to the top of a cafe just below us, again, probably to sort of camouflage it from being what it actually was. But it also had generator huts, no doubt for backup energy if they needed it. And also it was very much protected along the shoreline with things like pillboxes, probably a few spigot mortars, more of that scaffolding and barbed wire, but it also has something called a flame fugas, and we're going to talk to you a bit about that when we get down there.
So here comes Emma coming down where we started from.
Yeah, so we're literally down at the bottom of where the Grand Hotel used to be and the Grand Battery, along this cliffside here, and we brought you here because it's quite a significant sort of area, or certainly was. I think we had at least 3 pillboxes along here once upon a time, as well as I think one of the searchlights was also just slightly further along there. But we also had something else which I mentioned just up there, which was these flame fugases. It's not something we've ever really mentioned before, considering how significant they actually were along the Great British coast.
We haven't, and they would have been literally lined along the cliff top as a last resort. But because we've never spoke about them in our explores before, whoever actually made these would have had a very, very sinister and completely evil mind, if you like.
They weren't a pleasant weapon, and I think they were a bit of a last resort. Basically, they came about because there was lack of weapons in around about the mid-1940s. They didn't have many weapons, but they did have a lot of petrol.
A lot of fuel.
And they decided, let's come up with some sort of weapon using this petrol that we can basically set alight to anybody that decided that they wanted to land on these beaches. How these worked was that they would sort of bury barrels of petrol, oil, lime and tar into these barrels, and they would set them alight basically to shoot flames at the beaches. And I believe behind us, apparently, there was about 8 of these things, often these 40-gallon barrels. They'd maybe put 4 of them together. And there was about 7,000 of these positions all along the coast. You don't normally come across them, obviously, because they've either been gone. I mean, big barrels of petrol buried in the
I'd
cliffs.
hate to stumble across one in Dover, maybe. That's never been picked up before.
Dover would have had them. I think they used them to actually set fire to the sea. Down in Dover.
They were,
They used these for different reasons. And they weren't only on the coast. Some of them were actually at roadblocks and areas like that. So,
the thing is, how these things basically were so sinister is obviously we all know that petrol is very, very flammable. We also know oil helps to keep the petrol alight, obviously burns longer. The tar was designed to stick to you to allow that oil and petrol to burn basically a long period of time. And then the lime, as everyone knows, is a high corrosive. And it would have basically melted your arms off,
not
your
nice.
head, everything that you can probably come up against. It wasn't a nice weapon.
No.
But it was a last resort, and as far as I remember, I don't think any of them were used.
Well, supposedly, reportedly, none of them were used. But if you know a little bit about Shingle Street, and we're not going to get into that story today, that there was some whispers that maybe they were used, but it wasn't on record. So that's one for another day. But the Germans actually did catch on to these, that we were actually using these. And I believe they issued something like 100,000 asbestos suits for the Germans to wear, along with sort of a helmet. But these weren't very effective, the helmets. And I think they actually burnt some of their own alive testing out these suits. So not really very good. Thankfully we weren't invaded and we didn't actually have to do that, because whether they're enemies or not, that's not a very nice way to obviously end your life, is it?
Definitely not. Anyway, we're going to carry on and we'll see you in a second. And here we are at the end of our video.
Yeah, so this is pretty much the last thing that we can even show you. There is a further battery at the South Pier in Lowestoft, but there's nothing left of that now. It used to have 12-pounder quick-fire guns protecting the actual harbour mouth itself. That area is all completely out of bounds, so even if there was anything there, we wouldn't be able to get there. So we're going to end it here, I think, at Pakefield.
And we want to say a big thank you to one of the people that commented on the last video we did of here, saying it was total rubbish. And we absolutely agreed. We needed to come back, do more of a detailed video for yourselves.
Absolutely. So if you're watching and you know who you are, I hope you preferred this video to the last one. Hopefully it was a little bit more informative and not such a waste of 20 minutes like the last one.
Exactly.
But anyway, so here on the Suffolk coast, between Kessingland and Pakefield, taking a look at the coastal defences of World War II. It's been quite fascinating. We found more than we actually thought, and less in some cases than we actually thought.
That's it.
But it's still been
if
fascinating.
you did like this video, please like and subscribe. It's always helping our channel out.
Absolutely.
And also we have a Patreon for £3 a month.
Yep, so don't forget, check out all the information below. But here, from the Suffolk coast, thanks for watching as always.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.